My name is Maggie Eason, and my research is on evaluating the environmental commitments of members of the Arctic Council. My research question is, how does the 2019 Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA, from the Arctic Council reflect the Arctic policies of Canada, Finland, and Denmark? For some background, the Arctic Council is the leading intergovernmental forum that promotes cooperation, coordination, and interaction among the Arctic states. It is a non-binding council, but is the leading governing structure for the Arctic region. The members of the Arctic Council are Canada, the Kingdom of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, the Russian Federation, Sweden, and the United States. Each country is responsible for their own environmental impact assessment, but they are shaped by guidelines from 1997 that were approved by the predecessor group to the Arctic Council by all of the member states. In 2019, the Arctic Council's Sustainable Development Working Group completed a project around environmental impact assessments to determine the effectiveness of these EIAs and to also incorporate the recommendations and feedbacks of the relevant users. There is a wide range of literature and scholarship around the Arctic, mostly around governance or environmental issues. A couple of the key areas, one is how environmental policies correlate with geopolitical and economic prospects in the Arctic. Another area of literature is on the effectiveness of international councils. In terms of this research, this is mostly around the non-binding nature of the Arctic Council and how to strengthen its power within the region. There is also a conversation around the influence of other international governance bodies in the Arctic region. This is mostly around the United Nations and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is the leading governance for oceans. There is a lack of scholarship around comparing Arctic countries' regulations to each other, especially around the topic of this research, which is environmental impact assessments. So this project will address that gap in scholarship. The method that this research project will be using is a comparative case study of Canada, Finland, and Denmark. All three of these countries took leadership roles in the environmental impact assessment project. This will be a qualitative analysis of both the Arctic Council's EIA project and official Arctic strategies of the countries mentioned above. The EIA project was conducted between 2017 and 2019. It included 37 participants from 7 different countries among the member states of the Arctic Council. The Arctic policies used are from 2010 for Canada, 2013 for Finland, and 2011 from Denmark. Here is a breakdown of the findings of this research. It is separated first by the feedback from the EIA project and then analysis of policy. In my empirical analysis, I found 2 different arguments. The first is that the positive feedback from the EIA project does correlate with government policy. This is seen in the case of Canada and Denmark for their support of Indigenous communities, both within the feedback that was presented from the EIA project, as well as we can see this in the official policy as well, which did have significant support for Indigenous communities. In Finland, the EIA was praised for having progressive legislation, and we can clearly see this in Finland's detailed plan of action in their Arctic policy. Finland's policy was the longest by far, being 71 pages, and it also included not only goals for the Arctic policies, but detailed ways that they're going to accomplish these goals. The second takeaway from this analysis was that the negative feedback from the EIA project may or may not fit within government policy. We can see in Canada's policy that they have a significant support of their Indigenous communities, as well as acknowledging their rights and their territory. However, we can see in the feedback that the EIA received that Canada's implementation of their EIA leaves something to be desired. I would argue that this is because Canada might rely too heavily on their Indigenous groups. This can be seen in the language of their Arctic strategy, as well as the feedback given. In Denmark's case, there was mostly positive feedback around the environmental impact assessments in this country. However, the main complaint was that the implementation should be improved. In this case, because it's not a larger structural problem, it's more with specific implementation, we don't see this in government policy just because this isn't the correct space for it. So in Denmark's case, negative EIA feedback does not really fit within their government policy. In the example of Finland, the policy focuses on Indigenous rights and their protection. It does not really address the involvement of Indigenous communities, more that they are to be protected. In their policy, they address the importance of knowledge, but unlike the strategies of Canada and Denmark that specifically outline the importance of traditional knowledge and Indigenous knowledge, Finland neglects that. We can kind of see this in the negative EIA feedback when the participants claim that Finland does not engage with local communities and Indigenous communities enough. So this research is significant in a number of different ways. First, it's important to note the scope of this study. The countries chosen for this analysis were handpicked because of their demonstrated commitment to environmental protections, as well as their involvement in the EIA project itself. Because of this, its conclusions shouldn't be applied to other Arctic Council members. In fact, future research is needed to analyze the EIAs of the other Arctic Council members. This project also adds to existing scholarship on EAAs, which is rather small at the moment. Probably the largest significance of this project are for its implications for creating new Arctic policy. Due to the participation of relevant actors in that survey, it shows what areas need to be improved on and what is working well. It would be wise to address some of the areas that were seen as lacking.